Good riff by commentator Noah Smith about Blue Sky. For those who don't know, Blue Sky is where a bunch of cultural Marxists fled after Elon Musk bought Twitter and turned it into X. They fled to Blue Sky so they could pelt each other with repugnant rhetoric, amongst themselves, without having to deal with anyone providing pushback. Noah Smith writes, progressive culture's substitution of nastiness for persuasion and argument has robbed America of the incisive commentary of which intelligent progressives would otherwise be capable. Progressives got addicted to the power of cancel culture, their seemingly invincible H-bomb. And when it stopped working, they just didn't know what else to do because they had forgotten everything they used to do in the time before Twitter. Undoubtedly, the Blue Sky progressives think they're just socially shunning people, exercising the age-old power of social ostracism to show the door to people whose opinions are beyond the pale of polite society. But the cultural spaces that progressives still dominate are shrinking. Very few people are likely to think of Blue Sky as anything resembling quote-unquote polite society. Instead of ostracizing the people they hate, Blue Sky's progressives are only isolating themselves. The cannibalization that's happening. The cannibalization and marginalization happen simultaneously. Snake eating its own tail. The metaphor of your choosing here. I'll give you examples of what Noah Smith is talking about. I've had many this week. How about in the area of law enforcement? Yeah, that's still a thing. That defunding the police, decarcerating convicted criminals, not prosecuting to the full extent of the law violent criminals. That's very much a thing. I know we know that in Chicago, but I mean, it's bigger than that. Here was an exchange, for example, in committee between MF Spice of the Socialist Spice Girls, that would be Rashida Tlaib, and Byron Donalds, of course, my congressman in Southwest Florida and candidate for governor to follow DeSantis. An exchange because Rashida Tlaib wanted noted for the record how beautiful D.C. is, that D.C. was being mischaracterized by the Trump administration as having a crime problem. It's all manufactured. And she wants to free D.C.
And you're not telling people the beautiful parts that you do see in our nation's capital. And no, it's just wrong how we're doing it.
Chairman, I think it's insane that the chair lady doesn't have an argument, but she's going to refer to me and some of my colleagues.
Mr. Donald,
we were from the Third Reich. This is insane.
You're going to look at 14, 15-year-olds as a bunch of criminals?
It's insane. Do I look like a member of the Third Reich to you, Ms. Tlaib? Is that what I look like to you?
You're the one taking your voting card.
Is that what you think? Is that what you think? Is that what you think?
No, that's unethical.
I think it's radical and I think it's insane. And I'll respect everything that you say. But to say something like that to myself and all of my colleagues is way out of line. It's way out of line. It's way out of line.
Regular order, Mr.
Way out of line.
Regular order.
That's okay. But it's okay, right?
That is not how it goes.
It's okay, right?
You hold yourself accountable before you talk about
Hold
Washington,
myself accountable. Hold your own self accountable. How about that? Hold your own self accountable. How about that?
Free D.C. and make sure you vote with your own voting card. Don't be giving it to somebody else.
I love how after she screeches and draws the draws the response from Byron Donalds about characterizing Republicans as, Nazis. What else is new? That at the end of it, she goes into chanting like she's trying to start a rally in House Committee. Free DC, free DC. That's not anywhere near the best example, though. We've had a number from Jasmine Crockett, fake eyelashes Spice this week, including this instant classic from a recent podcast appearance.
I understood what was kind of pushing them there. And so I do want people to know that just because someone has committed a crime, it doesn't make them a criminal. That is completely different. Being a criminal is more so about your mindset. Committing a crime can come for a lot of different reasons.
Committing a crime is really a state of mind. It's not about actual real world behavior. So we should prosecute. I mean, it's probably what she actually believes. She's an officer of the court. She's quick to tell everyone. So we should prosecute people for what they think because they have a mind of a criminal, but not what they do, because a criminal act doesn't make you a criminal. I mean, it axiomatically does, but she's operating on such a higher intellectual level. So committing a crime does not make you a criminal because it's all in the mind. And BLM Brandon Johnson is having none of this business about a violent crime problem in Chicago either, just like Rashida Tlaib won't hear of it in D.C. because BLM Brandon knows what to do. He's doing it, and it's working. And he also knows what the problem is. Dare I say the sickness in Chicago is. And it's not repeat violent offenders, nor how they are dealt with by the criminal justice system. That's not the sickness.
The fact of the matter is we are driving violence down in this city, and we're using every single resource that's available to us. Jails and incarceration and law enforcement is a sickness that has not led to safe communities.
If only we would defund the police and shut down the criminal justice system, we'd have peace. Except for those people with criminal minds that have to be dealt with. And I'll leave it up to Jasmine and Brandon Johnson to figure that out. They're so far ahead of the learning curve on this one, you know? For more on this, please be joined by Will Reilly, Associate Professor of Political Science at Kentucky State University, author of Lies My Liberal Teacher Told Me, Debunking the False Narratives Defining America's School Curricula. And also, he's got a new undertaking that we'll talk about as well. He is part of a new group called Unified Solutions America, which is a consulting firm with that he started with some colleagues, and we'll get into that too. Will Reilly, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So the offerings on safety in America's big cities from the collection of intellects you just heard there, probably doesn't surprise you, except perhaps maybe their persistence in the face of public opinion on it.
Yeah, I think it's a surprising continuing denial of reality. And I mean, I think your commentary on Blue Sky was pretty accurate. This is something that's been true of the stuff that dominated society for the past 8 or 10 years all along, by the way. The idea that men can be women at will, so on down the line, the idea that your upper middle class black buddies are oppressed, the idea that cops don't prevent crime. These were always kind of pseudo-intellectual things that maybe 5 to 10% of people, when I poll, really believed, if you word the questions logically, but that people that were really dominant in kind of what you could call the discursive space, intellectuals, academics, reporters, were really prone to say, and at least pretend they believe. I mean, obviously, D.C. and Chicago have enormous crime problems. As you know, I'm from Chicago. Chicago, generally among large cities, is the most violent in the country annually. I mean, we average, 800 murders a year, and New York is at 475. So I think just flatly saying that's not true is inaccurate, but it's something we've seen for a while. Hopefully, I don't understand why Chicagoans voted for Brandon Johnson, honestly. I mean, if you look at Lori Lightfoot and, that level of radicalism and sometimes incompetence, and your decision is, well, let's make that worse. Let's go with more of the same from the street organizer guy, you're going to kind of get what you voted for there. But, you can look around you and see in most big cities that there are pretty obvious crime problems. And you can also look, for example, at what Trump is doing with the Guard in D.C. and see that when there are armed soldiers or cops standing in the middle of busy squares, the crime problem goes away. And I think most people can work out that kind of logic 101 equation there. Let's hope that our elected officials get there.
Well, I mean, this electorate and a lot of electorates in big cities, given Zoran Mamdani's position right now as the presumptive next mayor of New York City, they're not quite getting it. And it's the same ruses that are run over and over again. I mean, I know you know this, but for example, with Chicago Public Schools, since the lack of access to quality schools is a big issue based on the test scores, I mean, everything else, the CPS, Chicago Public School System, has a budget problem, as they do every year, right? Because there's never enough money, and there never will be enough money, according to the teachers union. And so, what do? the stories out of the press corps here, like NPR, the NPR affiliate, CPS special ed staff cuts, shuffling leave students lost, behind, and unserved. So $10.5 billion budget, and they cut special ed staff. Why do they do that? Well, it's the old Thomas Sowell formulation, which is if you're presented with a choice, we only have enough money to fund one of these two things, a statue to Benedict Arnold or children's vaccines. Which do you fund? And he said, if you're a politician, you fund the Benedict Arnold statue, which seems counterintuitive. But the point is, I'm going to fund the statue, and then I'm going to demagogue how we didn't fund childhood vaccines and how this is unconscionable. And then I'm going to get funding for both, even if it requires us to go into arrears to do it. And this is what happens in Chicago. This is the demagoguery you hear from Brandon Johnson and most other big city mayors.
Yeah, well, I think that part of the reason for this is that it's taboo to discuss the real problems. So, I mean, in terms of crime, the real problem is that a lot of groups, from hood African Americans, and I'm a black guy myself, to Portland blue hairs, have insane, recent immigrants from the third world, have insane crime rates that you don't see in much of the world. So when people say there's an incarceration issue in the United States, there's not an incarceration issue. We have a lot of people in prison because we are the biggest country that actually enforces laws. So, I mean, the problem with crime is that you have a lot of criminals. The root cause of crime is criminals. Saying things like we need to get to the true root causes like human evil, I mean, that might be interesting to talk to your priest about, but that's not going to work as social policy. I mean, in the schools, similarly, like the biggest input that causes a troubled school. And I've volunteered to teach in some of the schools down here in Appalachia, in Central Frankfurt, so on down the line. The biggest problem that causes a troubled school is the kids coming into it. I mean, are there dads in the home? You know, is there a background history of criminality in the family, so on? If you ignore that, if you ignore the root causes of most problems, you find yourself saying that one of a few things always has to be the issue. So for conventional leftists, I mean, one is racism, like the issue in Chicago where there's a black mayor, there's usually a black chief of police, so on down the line. The issue must somehow be like the legacy of oppression, or the suburbs are stealing money from the city. Like, I've gone to public meetings in Chicago and heard all this nonsense. With the schools, you see the other thing that sometimes is used to explain it, which is lack of money. The problem, though, is that since the 1960s, we've been spending tens of billions of dollars on all these issues, on closing racial gaps, on closing social class gaps. There's been almost no progress, by the way, since we're not addressing the real issues. When you say CPS, Chicago Public Schools, has a $10 billion budget, I live in the capital city of Kentucky. I think our city's budget is $12 billion. I mean, that's an enormous amount of money. That's what, $26,000 per student or something like that?
Yeah, closer to 30 because the student population is shrinking every year. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, but anyway, that's a book costs $24.99. Like there has to be massive wastage and even theft to take in that amount of money and do nothing. And that's pretty common for big city school districts, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, so what is your posture on the Trump reaction to, express his interest in helping big cities increase the peace, reduce the body count through the expression of the National Guard, in addition to ICE operations, surging ICE resources?
I think Trump, actually, if you've read The Art of the Deal, I mean, he blusters, he says some silly stuff, but he is an excellent chess player. I mean, I think if I were a smart big city mayor, and Eric Adams has said this, I don't know whether it's supposed to be on the record, but I would take Trump up on that. I would say, yeah, we're working across the aisle to reduce crime. I mean, sending the army into the worst high crime areas of your city is obviously gonna depress crime. It's one of those things where, people can posture and dance and make intellectual noises, but like any guy walking around the track with a golf club or sitting by the side of a basketball court or drinking a beer understands this is correct. There's no way that's not going to happen. If I were a big city mayor, why not, take the big guy up on it? I would just do it.
Well, from a substantive policy outcome orientation, but isn't it telling about these big city politicians that they all are openly and notoriously and very publicly rejecting the notion that the National Guard should come in, rebuffing President Trump's advances here? They don't want anything to do with it. So that has to say something about their political calculation with respect to their own party and thus their own status in these cities.
Yeah, I mean, it's a totally. I talk about this in my Lies book in the White Flight chapter. I mean, it's a totally amoral political calculus. Obviously, I mean, if you bring in pretty high quality, since he's only launched 5 or 6 out so far, Army or National Guard units, and you put them in your city, crime's going to drop. Why wouldn't you do that? Why would you be the guy who's coming out in favor of crime? Because you've done a rational analysis, you've done some game theory with your staff, and you realize that looking like you're associated with Trump or looking like you're saying that inner city black people commit a lot of crime or something like that is going to be more damaging to you than the reality of all these people getting mugged and raped. I'm not the most spiritual guy at all. I mean, we've met, but I would personally feel there's a kind of a noblesse oblige. There's a kind of duty as a leader to stop the people from getting mugged and raped. And if that really affects your popularity, then so be it. Your deputy can run next time. But also, the reason we think that the reason we have a genetic inclination to do good, to do lordly stuff like that, is that good often is its own reward. It makes you feel good, but it also gets you allies 6 months later when people realize what really happened. So I think in D.C., you talk to a black businessman in D.C. or a white one, I don't see a reason to racialize this, and ask them how their restaurant's going now that there's a soldier sitting outside it. And they'll mention that, notice there aren't homeless people using the porch as a toilet anymore. And they'll notice that there aren't guys breaking into the back door and trying to steal the pots. So whatever you might say in public, I think that guy from, Cote d'Ivoire or whatever is quite possibly going to vote Republican next time around. So I think this is something that leaders should do.
Before we let you go, tell us about your new undertaking, Unified Solutions America.
Yeah, Unified Solutions America, very accessible on the internet at UnifiedSolutionsAmerica.com. After the www, that's a capital USA, if it matters for you on your machine, Unified Solutions America. But this is almost an anti-DEI consulting company. I mean, this is something where I think the time has come. And I will say other people, Carol Swain and so on, have worked with similar models in the past. But this one, we're using a pretty specific methodology that was developed in large part by Brooks Crenshaw, who's a guy from the Navy SEAL teams overseas. We've got Kevin Jackson, former Fox executive, on the board. In the 30-second elevator pitch, what we want to do is come into companies, have people like James Lindsay, Local Distance, Logan Lansing, Charles Love, review their materials and see how much DEI crap got in over the past 10 years or so, hold seminars company-wide and talk to executives and talk to employees about what all this stuff that they've been doing, privilege walking and all that, where it came from, what the intellectual roots are. We want to remove it, and we want to replace it with a specific methodology that we're probably going to patent, trademark, et cetera, but that's sort of based around military HR, not the running with canoes on your shoulders executive stuff, but this is how you hire people. This is how you get a 20-point quality methodology in place. Even anti-DEI might be the wrong description, although we are very anti-DEI. This would be sort of reminding people about merit. Not even so much unity, not even so much goals, but merit is the focus of your company. If you're Nike, your job is to sell shoes. It's not actually to please every stakeholder in the world and appeal to minority communities and all the other nonsense their website now says. It's to promote the new kicks. You have to go to page 4 to see the Air Jordans. That's a problem.
I like that. That's a good example. Changing corporate culture, that's a worthwhile endeavor, and I hope it's a profitable one for you. All right, Unified Solutions America is the company, and you said UnifiedSolutionsAmerica.com.
Yeah, and it's just capital USA. It's UnifiedSolutionsAmerica.com. And if I could say one thing very briefly here. Yeah. This is actually something I've written about in my academic life. Like, there's a disconnect here between the people running a lot of these companies and their customer base, and a lot of them seem to hate their customer base. So we saw this with Cracker Barrel. I mean, they took both the Caucasian country guy and the barrel, let's say, off the logo. You saw this with Bud Light, where they were complaining their customer base is fraternity men and bikers. You sell light beer. And in every case, you can trace that back to like the Vassar-educated, C-level who came in and started running marketing. We want to kind of remove that person and their influence.
Will Reilly is Associate Professor of Political Science at Kentucky State University, author of Lies My Liberal Teacher Told Me, Debunking the False Narratives Defining America's School Curricula, and again, a principal in the new company new consulting company, Unified Solutions America. Will, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Will Reilly joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Hi, Dan Proft here. Data shows that boys make up more than 1/3 of those exploited in the sex trade. However, there are virtually no services available to male victims and survivors of trafficking and exploitation. They are often overlooked, ignored, and left without support.